Alright, in the boxing world today, everything's revolving around Floyd Mayweather and Manny Pacquiao. Now, I've been telling people, I'm going to put out a video here pretty soon. I'm sorry I kept y'all waiting. I've been busy, but, now I got some time on my hands. And it's not just going to be one video. It's going to be, a multiple part series. We're going to talk about, legacy, titles, basically everything concerning those two in the sport. Now, one of the things that I've noticed a lot of people do is they seem to think that when it comes to a boxer's record or, the amount of KOs they have on that record, they seem to think that's what determines the boxer's worth in terms of, where they stand pound for pound. Now, some people, they just don't seem to really understand what pound for pound actually is when it comes to combat sports. Now, in combat sports, when you look at the pound for pound ranking, it's not how many opponents a person's fought, how many knockouts they've had in their career, none of that. What pound for pound actually is this. Pound for pound in ranking is a fighter's skill level regardless of weight. That means, a light heavyweight fighter, you can say Roy Jones Jr. versus, Nonito Donaire, who's down there, bantamweight? It's asking, how do those two fighters compare when it comes to their skills? Now, when you look at, Ring Magazine or ESPN, Yahoo Sports, whatever sports media group you want to go to for, pound for pound rankings, they base it all on votes. They don't look at the fighter's actual skill level and compare that to a fighter in another class the way that they should, which is why, there's a lot of confusion about, who's actually pound for pound number one. So you take a guy like Manny Pacquiao, who's at number one on a lot of lists. How does his skill level compare to somebody in a different weight class? Now, you've seen a lot of people who brawl like Pacquiao does. They come forward while swinging. Now, Mike Tyson, he had that same kind of style, but his was different though, because Tyson actually understood defense. Now, if those two were to fight at the exact same weight, who would win? In my book, I got Tyson winning that one easy, simply because, he's more grounded in the fundamentals in boxing than Pacquiao is. Tyson had head movement. He knew how to block. He knew how to bob and weave to evade punches, He was, at his time, when he was dominating in heavyweight, he was one of the few heavyweight boxers who was able to do that. Now, Manny Pacquiao, people are saying, he's pound for pound number one because he's fighting more times a year than Floyd is. That's another thing that Ring Magazine does. It doesn't really make any sense. They base, your pound for pound ranking based on how active you are. Well, that's the way, things are, then, that makes it kind of hard to stay up there, because, there's some fighters who don't feel like they need to fight multiple times a year, and then there's other fighters who, they want to fight as many times a year as possible. So, that's why you can't really look at any of these boxing media outlets, Yahoo, Ring, whatever, like I mentioned before, when you want to determine who number one pound for pound is. You have to actually look at what's happening inside the ring. Now, with Pacquiao being pound for pound number one, if you wanna base it based on what Ring Magazine is saying, staying active, fighting multiple times a year, Juan Manuel Marquez should be up there in the top three, with Floyd and Pacquiao. They should knock Martinez out maybe, but Martinez struggled a little bit in his last fight, and Marquez, as many of y'all know, gave Pacquiao hell like he did the first 2 times. So, that's why that ain't really valid in terms of pound for pound ranking. Now, the next thing I want to talk about is legacy. People say that, Floyd's legacy suffered because there's a lot of fighters that he ducked, a lot of people he didn't want to fight that Pacquiao did. They say Pacquiao made Floyd's opponents look worse than Floyd made them look. But, there's a lot of things that you have to consider. Now, there's a video out on YouTube by APJ135212. It's called Manny Pacquiao Exposed Welterweight Opponents. Now, when you look at this, you have Freddie Roach explaining how they've been picking Pacquiao's last few opponents. Now, people say Floyd is cherry-picked, but, you look at the people he fought. He's been fighting people coming off good victories, people who was looking good, people, when it came to titles, people who actually held titles, who were at the top of the division, versus going after all them other fighters who's bums and holding vacant titles, paper titles, whatever, Manny Pacquiao's trainer, Freddie Roach, come out and tells everybody, they've been looking for people who've been looking terrible in their last few fights. He talked about Oscar De La Hoya. Oscar came in to train. He said Oscar was having trouble making it around the track while, he was working out, jogging, saying Oscar was really dehydrated during the weigh-in, saying Oscar still had fresh IV marks in his arm, when they was trying to hydrate him for the fight. That he was in bad shape for that fight. They asked him about Margarito. They said it depends on how good or bad he looks against Cotto and Mosley or whatever. Now, here's the link to that video for those of y'all who want to watch it. So, go ahead and watch that. I'm not going to touch too much on it. This guy, he covered it pretty well. It's stuff I've been telling people all along. But I just never felt like making a video on that. So, you go ahead and watch that. And after you get done watching this, or you can pause this, go listen to that if you want to. It really don't matter. But anyways, that's the thing with that. Now, when you look at Floyd's record, there's only been 3 times he fought an opponent that was coming off a loss. Now, those 3 people were Justin Juco, DeMarcus Corley, and Zab Judah. Now, Justin Juco, it's understandable fighting that dude when he came off a loss. It's Floyd's 21st fight, his 3rd title defense. So, there wasn't really anybody else who could have fought him at that time. Early in their career, they don't really match them up against big name people. But, he just became champion. That was pretty early for a champion. But, oh well, past is past. Now, DeMarcus Corley fought him after Corley had lost to Judah, who Mayweather later fought. And Judah's the other person, that was coming off a loss to Carlos Baldomir. Baldomir beat Judah when Judah was the undisputed welterweight champion, stripped him of all his titles. And that's something that's, important that you need to pay attention to because it's going to come up later. Now, people say Mayweather ducked Cotto and ducked Margarito. Now, I'm going to post a link to this article by Dan Raphael. It's on ESPN. And this article is called Mayweather Turns Down $8 Million to Fight Margarito, which is a little misleading. Now, because of that, people are going to say flat out, oh, well, what are you going to talk about? It says it right there. He ducked Margarito. Well, I'm going to take part of that article posted up here, and I'm going to read it for y'all. Now, Bob Arum states, that Mayweather would have agreed for the $8 million to fight Margarito. But, on top of that, he wanted a $10 million guarantee to fight Cotto and Ricky Hatton. Whereas Arum was only willing to guarantee $7 for that fight. And then Arum also brings up how Floyd wanted $20 million to fight Oscar De La Hoya, and Arum said, that's not possible. That's not going to happen. Well, as we all know, Floyd went on to fight De La Hoya, ended up getting his biggest payday at that point, which was $5 million more than what he was asking Arum for in the first place. So, that just made Arum look stupid. But because of all that, that's why Mayweather decided he was going to buy off his contract from Arum. He made a free agent, became his own boss. And because of that, Arum was mad. That was his prize fighter. So what's he do? Later on, he turns around and says that Floyd ducked Cotto and Floyd ducked Margarito. And ever since then, everybody been saying it. That's what everybody always brings up. Every time they talk about Cotto and Margarito, say, oh, well, Floyd ducked them in the past. And, with the defamation lawsuit Pacquiao is filing against Floyd, he could countersue, sue Arum. Pacquiao before, during interview, on the record has said, that maybe Floyd doesn't want to fight because he's scared. Arum already got everybody thinking that Floyd is scared. That's slander. That's him defaming Floyd's character. Labeled him as a chicken. Floyd was off the record, joking about that, saying Pacquiao probably taking drugs, power pellets or whatever. But, this is stuff that Arum was quoted as saying. But, you don't see Floyd getting mad about it because he already know he ain't dug nobody. So he doesn't really have to prove them wrong. Another person that some people have said Floyd ducked was Paul Williams. Thing is, when was he gonna fight Paul Williams at? That's what I want to know. Williams, his first fight came into the ring weighing 156. He'd already been up to 160 by the time Floyd even made it up to not heavyweight, but welterweight. And people are saying Floyd should have fought him. Okay, well, when Floyd got up to that weight class, he fought Sharmbay Mitchell, in November. Williams had a fight in December. In April, they both had fights that much. And then Williams fought again the next month. So, that November, that's when people were expecting Margarito versus Mayweather. Floyd ended up fighting Baldomir instead. On the day that he would have fought Margarito, were it not for him falling out with Arum. And people say Baldomir, the fight wasn't good because Baldomir was too old, that he dug Margarito for that. Well, who was Margarito at that time? Margarito had the NABO title and the USNBC. Those ain't even major titles. And, with that in mind, it made it seem kind of pointless for Floyd to even fight Margarito, because one, he ain't had a name, he ain't had no major titles, he wasn't ranked at the top. All that we had on Margarito was, Arum said he's the most dangerous man in boxing at the time. But at that time, that was just after Baldomir beat Zab Judah. Now, this is my personal opinion, and most of y'all probably agree with me too. What's better? Fight some no-name contender in your weight class, or fight the guy who's the undisputed champ, and make more money and get yourself a title out of it. Y'all think about that. If he's a coward because he ducked some dude who's a bum at best to fight the undisputed champion in his division at the time, I don't know what type of logic y'all going by, because that don't even make no sense. I mean, if he would have fought Margarito, people would have said, oh, he should have fought Baldomir instead. Baldomir just beat Zab, who's the undisputed champ. So that's a lose-lose situation. Anyway, you look at it in terms of what the public's gonna see about it. But that's all for this video, because I don't know how much YouTube's gonna let me upload. But, come back and catch part 2 of Mayweather versus Pacquiao saga. I'm continue talking about Floyd's past opponent.